Good evening, folks. Welcome to this webinar where we're looking at everything UCAS. My name is Mark Hulbert, and I'm the head of the sixth form here at Milton Keynes College. And I'm joined tonight by my colleague Joanna Brown, who is head of all things careers and progression and the fountain of all knowledge in relation to everything in terms of progression to university. So you're in good hands with Joanna this evening. This is a fairly informal thing. We've not prepared too many slides to plow through. And what we would like you to do is to pop any questions that you have into the Q&A. And if you could put it in the Q&A section rather than the chat, that will make sure then that we pick those up and we can answer all of the questions that you have. So I'm just going to start off before I hand over to Joanna. Joanna's just going to bring up the slide deck, which hopefully you can see. So I'm going to start by just being terribly anecdotal, really, and talk about my own experience, because on the first slide there are two young people there who are my children, Jack and Emily Kate. And both of them are now at university. Jack actually has just finished his final year at Warwick Uni, studying film studies. And then Emily Kate, my daughter, she's just completed her second year at Bournemouth University, studying forensic investigation. And when they went off to university, I'd been working in sixth form education for a long time, for about 30 years, something like that. But I have to say, it was quite difficult being on the other side of the fence. So I feel very much with you in this, in that I've lived and breathed sixth form education, advised lots of young people in terms of university progression. But when it came to my own children, it was all rather different, really, because suddenly it felt very personal. So there was that whole question about, well, should they go to university at all? Is university right for them? Is it the right kind of progression? What kind of degree might they be looking at? What sort of university might they ultimately go to? And I remember as a family, we spent a lot of time visiting universities, and I would absolutely encourage you to do that. Your daughter, your son, will be spending probably 3 years at university, and you've got to make sure that it's the right place for you. And there are campus universities, there are city universities. My son went to Warwick as a campus uni. Emily Kate is at a city or town university. And they are very different. They have very different feelings, and I think give quite different experiences. I know as a family we really felt the pressure of them applying, and it's quite complicated, but Joanna and her team and the sixth form team will hold our students' hands through every stage of the application process, and hold your hands too if we need to do that, and make it as simple as it can possibly be. I know certainly we were very worried about grades, because, of course, most students apply for university when they're still in sixth form and they haven't got their final grades at that point. So it was really based on predicted grades. And probably most people in education would wish that it weren't so. But unfortunately, it is. That's still the system that we've got. Jack, as my son, he finished his A levels, not intending to go to university, so didn't apply when he was in sixth form. Got a job which was testing computer games, and it was probably then around about the December after he'd left college that he decided to apply. So when he applied, he'd already got his A level grades, so he knew exactly what they were. And I have to say that made for a much smoother process But unfortunately, we do have a system where we have to, or well, we don't have to, but most students do apply in their second year, and therefore we are still working to predicted grades. We certainly were thinking about what if they don't get the grades, the whole clearing process, which we can say a little bit about this evening. We had all of those concerns that you're probably thinking about. Is it worth the expense? What about alternatives, such as degree level apprenticeships? And we'll touch on those a little bit this evening. We had that whole personal statement thing going on of quite a lengthy piece of writing really, where you're selling yourself and summarizing all of your experiences. And that used to be one very long extended piece of writing. That's actually changed now slightly, so we have 3 boxes that our students will be writing under. But one of those boxes, I know Joanna's going to talk about this later on, but I'll just mention it here. The third box is, what have you done outside of your courses to prepare for university? And I think lots of our students will struggle with that. Well, not just our students, but students generally. And that's partly why we wanted to run this event this evening, because if we're thinking, okay, actually at the moment I don't have too much to put into that box, well, there's time to do something about it, and there's an awful lot that can go in there that Joanna will be touching on. We had concerns that you may have about, well, I can't imagine them living away from home. They don't know how to use a washing machine. They've never cooked a bowl of pasta, or and we certainly had those concerns. I couldn't see either of my children being able to cope with independent living, but they did. And they very soon didn't really want to come home at all. We had all of those concerns about, will they make friends, and they did. And universities are fantastic at gearing up for things like Freshers' Weeks, and the well-being and support that there is at university is phenomenal. And because, of course, they are aware that it is very difficult for lots of young people. For most young people, it's the first time really that they've been away from home for the first time. So those support mechanisms are very well established at universities. And I guess the final thing that I'd never really had to deal with when I was just advising students in a professional capacity was, how will we cope as parents? And I remember when Jack went to university first, when we dropped him off that first day and turned around and left him. That was quite an emotional moment. I remember steering my wife back to the car, who was in tears, and we felt like terrible parents who were abandoning our child. So, we can talk about some of that, and that's why, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own experience, because it is a lived experience. And Joanna, I think your children either are at university, or so one at uni and one going this September. So, we're not just doing this professionally. We understand what it is to be a parent and going through this. So I'll share some of that. Hopefully that might have given you perhaps a feeling of some of the questions that you might have. You may have children at university already, you may not. It never feels quite right to refer to them as children, because they'll be 18 at least by the time they're going off to university, but they're your children, and it's important to remember that. So I'm going to hand over to Joanna then, who's going to pick up the more meaty stuff about university, and then we'll answer your questions as we go along. Pop those questions, as I say, into the Q&A, and then we can chat through those. Joanna, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Right, let's move on to my slides. As Mark said, I've got a few slides to run through. I'm just checking it's looking all right on his screen. It is. I have a few slides to run through, and then we've got lots of questions, hopefully, afterwards. So the very first thing, I'm sure this is on top of everybody's minds, can they afford to go to university? When I speak to our 17-year-olds, I say, are you thinking of uni? Quite often the response is, can't afford it. And to me, that's a great shame, because these headlines that I've just plucked off the internet here, these are not the real picture at all. I'm certainly not very wealthy, Mark perhaps is, but our children are at university and it is affordable. So, but the main thing I want you all to know this evening is that if the money alone is the reason you're not encouraging your children to go, or your children are thinking they can't go, then that's not necessary. There are reasons they may not want to go, fine, but it shouldn't be the money thing. Now, student finance is really complicated, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to sit here for ages while I go through it in detail. So I'll just give you the headline facts to take away. Student loans. First of all, they do not affect the young person's credit rating. So I'm sure you know, if you have a bank loan or a credit card, there's a little sort of mark against your name. And if you then applied for something else, they would take that particular debt into account when you're applying for another loan. The student loan doesn't affect it. So they'll still be able to get those flashy iPhones. They'll be able to get a mortgage if they can afford one later on. The second point to be aware of is that the repayments are tailored to their income. So if they earn less than £25,000 a year when they finish their degree, they don't need to repay anything at all. As soon as their income goes above 25,000, then the repayments start coming out of their pay packet automatically, just like their tax and their national insurance. And the amount they pay at the moment is 9% of the amount over £25,000. So let's say they earn £26,000 a year, they would repay 9% of that £1,000, which is something like £8 a month. So hopefully that is suddenly much, much better. When I do this presentation for the students, I can feel the whole room go, at that moment, because it's suddenly gone from thousands of pounds of debt to £8 a month. Obviously, if they're earning £100,000, then they'd be paying a larger amount, but it'd be the same proportion. It has none of the risks of other types of loan. So with a bank loan, if you lost your job, you'd still be committed to repaying however many £100 a month. With this, if your income goes down or you lose your job, the repayments stop. So there's another sort of a good thing in that way. And eventually, and by eventually we do mean 40 years after the end of the course, but eventually anything else that's left owing is wiped off. I know that's a long time. When you say it to an 18-year-old, they look at you like, I'll be dead by then. But it passes, and it just means you're not going to be going into your pension years still repaying your student loan. So, and another fact for you as well, that about half of students are never expected to pay back the full amount. So the advice that I gave to my children, I'm sure Mark gave to his, and I give to the students is really just forget that it's there. It will be there for a very long time. The repayments will come out of your pay packet automatically. You don't need to really think about it. Next slide I want to talk you through are the key dates for 2026 entry. So working backwards from the UCAS deadline. All applications have to be with UCAS by the 14th of January. That is what they call their fair and equal consideration deadline. This means that any applications that are with them by 6 p.m. that day will be looked at by the universities. Any applications that get in after that might be looked at. They probably will, because universities want to fill their courses, but the point is they don't have to look at them after that point. So to get all our applications in by the 14th of January, we need them submitted to us here in the college by the 14th of November. And I've got a little diagram coming up in a minute to explain why we need those 2 months. And then if any students are going for special courses like any of the Oxford or Cambridge, medicine or veterinary science, an even earlier deadline for that. And they come back to college on the 8th of September, which I'm sure you can see. This is why Mark and I are talking to you now, because between the 8th of September and the 14th of November really isn't very long at all. So here's a medal diagram. On the left-hand side, we've got them coming back to college. They've got that, month and a little bit, in which they've got to get on with the second year of their course, find their certificates, write the personal statement, visit the open days, fill in quite a long and complicated UCAS form, as well as studying and their social life, very important, and any part-time jobs they've got. 14th of November is when they submit it to the college, and that's when my team's work kicks in. And we have about 500 applications every year, all of which we read absolutely every single word of them. And we send them back to students for changes, and they go round and round a loop quite a long time sometimes until we get them as perfect as we can. And then Mark and his team will be writing the references and attaching the predicted grades. And obviously, we've also got our day jobs to do as well. And right slap bang in the middle of that is the Christmas holidays. Lots of staff work over the holidays, but Christmas is the only time the college is completely closed. So there's quite a rush there to get everything ready by the 14th of January. However, we do have a guarantee. If your young person gets their application submitted to the college by the 14th of November, then we will get it to UCAS in time for the UCAS deadline. If it comes in after the 14th, we do our very best. And so far in my 4 years here, we've done all of them, but we don't promise it'll be in time if it comes to us late. So I hope that makes sense. Therefore, this is why we're saying get a head start, because preparation is essential. When we start helping them set up the accounts in September, we always say, how many of you have been to an open day? How many of you have done some courses? And they look at us like ducks in a thunderstorm, and you think, you had all the summer, 8 weeks or so of holiday, and you didn't do anything. But we were saying this early on. Open days, do go to open days. You might think, as Mark has touched on, you might be fixed on, I want to be on a campus university, and then you visit one and think, no, I don't. I want to be somewhere else. My own daughter was insistent. She wanted to be on a city university, and she's ended up at York, which is a campus one. So you won't know until you're there. And you're going to be spending at least 3 years living in that place. So it's got to be somewhere they feel happy. Lots of universities offer taster lectures and so on, and they are fantastic. I do advertise any that get sent to us. I advertise them on the internal careers chat, and they go to all of Mark's staff as well. So your students should be aware of them. And then that third bullet point there is a MOOC. This stands for a massive open online course. And these are free or nearly free courses run by universities right across the world. They can be anything from a couple of days to a couple of weeks long. And the reason we say these are so good is if you're going to be applying perhaps for aeronautical engineering, you may be able to do a MOOC with the University of California on wing design. I'm just plucking these ideas out of the air. But then that gives you a really, really meaty thing to start talking about in your university application. And there is a MOOC, I would say, Mark, for pretty much almost any subject.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And these are online, and your students can access them through Unifrog, which is our college careers platform. The whole point of getting a head start is that, as Mark's already mentioned, the personal statement is now in 3 sections. It used to simply be one big chunk, which they needed to cover these 3 points, but to make it easier for students now, they've actually asked these 3 questions. First of all, why do you want to study this course or subject? Hopefully, after 2 years of A-levels, they've got a good idea of why they want to study what they want to study. Secondly, how have your qualifications and studies helped you prepare for it? Those are the things they're doing here in college. But number 3, this is the one that they're really going to have to think about. What else have you done to prepare outside of education, and why are these experiences useful? This is where they will put, I went to a taster lecture. This is where I took a MOOC in this, that, or the other. But this is also where they can mention things like Saturday jobs or volunteering, or if they're scouts or the Duke of Edinburgh or anything like that. These are all different skills which can help towards being successful at university. So we want to make sure our students have a lot of evidence to put into that box. And as Marcus said, we are here to help. I have a team which you can reach out to. Our email is careersteam@mkcollege.ac.uk. You can find us on the college website. And obviously your students have their own tutors, and Mark's whole team can be reached by A-level team at mkcollege.ac.uk. I've put just a small selection of useful websites there. If you've got your phones or a screenshot, you can take them, but we'll be sharing them as well. And I've just realised I've got .org.uk on that last one. That should be org, the scholarshiphub.org.uk. And also we have a booklet for students called UCAS Essentials, which we're just updating for this year now. And all this information is also in there, and they can pick those up from the careers offices and from the study centres at each site. So I will stop sharing my screen now, and it's really, I think, over to everybody else for questions.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm just monitoring the questions as they come in. Not too many questions at the moment. So either Joanna has done sterling work in terms of covering everything that you wanted to ask, or you're just in the process of typing those questions in at the moment. And do ask those questions, because obviously that's why we're here this evening, to answer the questions that you have. Just whilst we're waiting for questions to come in, just picking up on a couple of things that Joanna has said, I would absolutely emphasize the importance of meeting those dates, those deadlines that Joanna has shared. Hopefully Joanna's been able to communicate there how much work there is behind the scenes at the college once a student has submitted their application. When they do submit their application, it comes to us. It doesn't go straight to the university. We will do an awful lot of work. Joanna said we read every single word of every single application, and we absolutely do. We will be fine-tuning them, sending them back to students. Sometimes it's, tidying up the grammar. Sometimes it's, okay, well, perhaps you could emphasize this aspect of your learning a little bit more than you already have done. Sometimes there are just inaccuracies, so students don't always know the exact course title. They know that they're studying forensic investigation, or they're studying sociology, psychology, and law, but they don't always know exactly what the title is. Sometimes they get the fee code wrong, and if they get that wrong, that can have significant implications in terms of how much they would be expected to pay with things like course fees and tuition fees. So we need to double check all of those things. So really, really important to hit those deadlines. So the college internal deadline is there for a reason. I think sometimes students get the idea that, oh, it's okay, the UCAS equal consideration deadline isn't until January. I don't need to get my application in there until January. But they just won't get as good a service from us as a college if they take that approach, because they're just not leaving us enough time to have that dialogue and that conversation about their application. So if you could do one thing and really stress the importance of those deadlines, pin the deadlines onto your fridge at home. Talk to your daughter or your son about the deadlines that are coming up. That third box, it really is an important one, and again, I'd really love you to have a conversation with your son or your daughter about what's going into that third box. There's so much that can go into there that Joanna's already covered. Any trips that they've been on, that's something that they could talk about, and any TED Talks that they've watched, or any articles that they've read over and above the work that they would normally, have routinely done in their courses. Joanna mentioned MOOCs and massive open online courses. The A-level students have academic supervision on their timetable, and we do a lot of that sort of work in academic supervision. Some are taking the EPQ, the extended project qualification. That's a great thing to talk about, because it really demonstrates your passion for your subjects. We've got some students who have done an introductory Latin course, and if they're taking law, for example, they can say, well, look, I was so fascinated by the fact that all of these legal terms came from Latin that I wanted to go and study Latin myself. So all of those sorts of things would be great to go into that box. Just one thing, Joanna, that I wanted to ask in terms of the early applicants, so Oxford, Cambridge, medicine, veterinary medicine, and veterinary science. Dentistry as well, is dentistry part of the early applicants? Yeah. So Joanna's nodding. Oh, you can see Joanna on the screen. So yeah. So dentistry as well. I think with the courses that we're offering at the moment, unlikely that we will have any of those students. But I'm conscious we've got some science students as well. So that would definitely be one for early application. And that does come around very quickly because we've got that long summer holiday. Students have a long summer holiday, and as soon as we get back, we really do need to hit the ground running. And that's why I've said to all of our students, we want at least a draft of their personal statement to be completed by the time that they go into the summer. So we've got some questions coming in now. So first question about SEN students. So students with special educational needs. So do students, SEN students, get additional student finance?
Lovely. The EHCPs, if your student has a education, health and care plan, they stop once they go to university. But universities do have all sorts of money available for different needs. So there may be, for example, that they get a laptop to help them with their studying, or there may be they get first dibs on the accommodation, things like that. Sometimes students need to live at university over the holidays as well, and that's also possible. So those are things that are generally available. And then if a student qualifies for disability living allowance, then that's also available for students. One of my team called Jade, she's an expert in all of this. So there are some extra funds as well.
Thanks, Joanna. And what I would say is that any exam access arrangements that students have at college at the moment, those will carry through to university, and students need to be able to talk about those on their application and to those universities. The support is fantastic. My daughter is dyslexic and has additional time. She has a laptop, she has a reader, she has a scribe or access to those things, and that transferred through incredibly smoothly to Bournemouth University where she is. And we were quite surprised, I think, actually, at how easily that happened. But of course, it only happens if those are brought to the university's attention. So question here, can we help students to get work experience, preferably related to their area of interest or study, before they need to submit an application? And the answer, I guess, is yes, to an extent. Obviously, there are limited opportunities out there for work experience, and I know we have some parents of science students. It's particularly difficult to find work experience in science because labs, hospitals are sometimes reluctant to take on students who are the age of our students, so 16, 17, 18. So we can to an extent, but obviously it is limited. Milton Keynes is fantastic in terms of having opportunities, but that there are so many young people trying to get experience in relatively few areas. We do advertise work experience placements, don't we, Joanna? Both through careers and through the A-level team chat that we have.
Oops. I would also suggest as well, if they use their Unifrog accounts to look for apprenticeships that are available, it's often quite worth approaching a company and say, I know you're advertising an apprenticeship. I don't want one of those, but would you be able to offer me 4 or 5 weeks over the summer? Because clearly these companies are open to young people coming in, and that's quite a good way sometimes of getting into that. We have a work experience team here at the college. Do they work with your A-level students, Mark?
They do, yes.
The other thing I would say actually is online work experience. There are sometimes online opportunities, and some of those MOOCs that Joanna mentioned earlier on, the massive open online courses, those are geared towards specific areas of employment. So even if they're not physically going into a placement, something like a MOOC, so I was looking the other day at forensic science and forensic investigation. There are a number of courses that students can do, and they're free. They're not all free, but there are lots of free ones that are out there. All of that would count as really useful work experience, and it's such an important thing, I think, to be able to demonstrate your passion for your subject, and that's what universities are looking for. They're looking for students who can really demonstrate passion for film studies, forensics, whatever it is that they might be doing. A question here then, when will students get the predicted grades that they'll use to make decisions on potential courses? So we have trial exams coming up next week, actually, next Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday. So once we've marked those trial exams, obviously that's going to take a little bit of time, but before the end of term, we'll have a good sense of where people are at the moment. We'll be looking at the assessment checkpoints that they've done throughout the year. As a starting point, we take the average of all of their ACPs, assessment checkpoints, if they're on an A-level program, and we use that to get a sense of where the predicted grade might be. It has to be evidence-based. It is only a starting point. We understand that all of the students are on the course for another year, so they've got another year of progression before they take those final exams. So at that point, we'll be talking to students about predicted grades. There is, of course, opportunity for students really to grow and develop over the summer. So we'll be looking at the work that they do at the beginning of next year. So those predicted grades can change right up to the point really where they make their application. But certainly once we do those trial exams next week after, we've got a really good sense of where we would expect them to be. How do we find out what courses are available at universities? There are lots of ways, aren't there, Joanna? Do you want to pick that one up?
Well, I think the best thing is if you go to UCAS, ucas.org, which is the Universities and Colleges Admission Service, and from there you can simply type in forensics and it will bring up a list of every course, even remotely related to forensics on there, and you can then start narrowing it down by area if you wish to. That's one way. It might be your child is really, I want to be by the seaside and I want to go to Brighton. So go to the Brighton University website and see what they offer. There's any other way that you'd suggest, Mark?
UCAS is probably
the main area to go to, isn't it? Well, UCAS and Unifrog. I mean, Unifrog really is great because it brings everything together into one usable place. Everything is so easy for students to access now. But I would emphasize again, a great way of finding out about a university that's on your shortlist is to go and visit it. The universities will all have open days. Some are online actually now, some are virtual. So you could choose to go to a virtual open day or physically go to the university, and then you get a taste of not just what the courses are like, but also what the uni itself is like. And speak to us. And we have a lot of experience of helping students to progress to university. So come and have a chat if anyone is stuck. Question here: will we be sharing? Excuse me. Will we be sharing the presentation? We will. We'll send it round, and that will go around with a recording as well. Yeah, another question about STEM, which I think we've probably already covered. Can we give an overview of how clearing works these days? Yeah, I think we can do that, can't we? I think you can do that, Joanne.
Okay, clearing. Once again, if you read the newspaper headlines, there's a sort of a tinge to clearing about it's where everybody gets left up, but it's not like that anymore. Clearing is when the universities look at how many spaces they have left on their courses. Clearly, they want their courses to be full, so they then open them up saying, we still have these spaces available, and students can apply for them. Clearing obviously really kicks in once the results have come in and students have or haven't got the grades that they need, but actually clearing opens up at the end of this month on the 30th of June. So if your young person is sitting there and they've got maybe no offers, or they're not really that happy with the offers they have got, they can turn down any offers they're holding and apply through clearing instead. Clearing, you apply for one place at a time, and it's actually a really good idea to ring the university first of all and be very, very clear what it is you're applying for. But that is what clearing is, and it can be a way to get a really, really good opportunity. If, for example, come August and your grades are better than expected and you could have gone to a better university than you've got hold the offers for, you can use clearing then to upgrade as well.
Thanks, Joanna. Just looking at the other questions that are coming in then, and there's lots actually now that are coming in. I mean, just before I go on to the other questions, I mean, one thing you may not know is that when students are applying to university, they'll apply to 5. They've got 5 spaces on the UCAS application, so they could apply for 5 courses at 5 completely different universities, which is what most students do. They can apply for multiple courses at the same university, but they've got those 5 blocks, those 5 slots really. And then as those offers come in, which Joanna was talking about, then if they get, let's say they get an offer from all 5 of their universities, then ultimately they'll be choosing 2 of those. So one is their first choice, the university that they really want to go to, but possibly it's going to be pushing them maybe a little bit in terms of their expected grades. And then they'll also make a second choice, which is their backup, the university that, yes, they'd still want to go to, they'd still want to do that course, but the grades are probably going to be more manageable and well within reach. And then, as Joanna said, if they don't then get any of those offers back, then that's when we might be looking at clearing. There are sometimes unconditional offers. Most offers are conditional. So conditional offers, yes, we'll take you on if you get 2 Bs and a C, if it's A levels, or we'll take you on if you get 104 UCAS points. We can say a little bit about UCAS points in a moment if anyone wants us to do that. Very occasionally, universities will make unconditional offers, which are basically saying, come to us, we want you, and it actually doesn't matter what grades you get. That's usually if you make us your first choice. There's usually some sort of condition that's attached to those. Personally, I wish universities wouldn't make unconditional offers, because if a student's got an unconditional offer, they can then switch off in terms of their A levels, because they think, well, it doesn't matter what grades I get in my A levels any longer. And actually, ultimately, in the long run, it can really matter in terms of applying for jobs. If that unconditional offer doesn't work out for any reason and you want to move to a different uni or a different course, then you need to fall back on those A levels. So if anyone does get an unconditional offer, I think it's still really important to work as hard as you possibly can and get the best grades that you possibly can in those A levels. Joanna?
I want to add something to this as well. Sometimes scholarships are based upon high academic achievement. So if you're capable of 3 A's, but you coast because you've got an unconditional offer and still get in with 3 C's, well, you possibly will be missing out on the chance of a scholarship.
Thanks, Joanna. So that's clearing. What costs can student loans be used to cover? So we've got the tuition fees, maintenance fees.
Yeah, there's 2 student loans. There's the tuition fee loan, which pays for the teaching and all the support services at university, and that goes straight to the university. You never see it. And then there's the maintenance loan, which will pay for living costs. That one varies slightly by where they're living, where in the country, and whether they're staying at home with parents or living independently. And that could be spent on whatever they want, but then they wouldn't have anywhere to live. So there is no restriction. If they want to go and spend it all on CDs, they have CDs still, that money is theirs. But generally, that is spent on accommodation and bills and food and travel and so on.
But do we still have CDs? Are CDs a thing now? We've gone back to vinyl, haven't we? I think we've gone full circle. could we say a little bit about apprenticeship? So we've mentioned that there are degree level apprenticeships, and I think I've spoken to some students who say, I'm not going to go to university, I'm going to do a degree level apprenticeship, as though that is a certainty, and as though it's as easy to take on a degree level apprenticeship as it is to get a course at university. I say easy, it's not easy to get a course at university, but you know what I mean. And Joanna, that's not necessarily the case, is it? They're relatively few and far between still.
I mean, I think everybody, if they could get a degree apprenticeship, probably would want one because you're paid and there's none of the student debt. But they vary hugely by subject area. For example, there are usually quite a few in business and IT, but I've never seen one in sciences, for example. Secondly, they are massively competitive. And thirdly, quite often they're used to upskill the existing workforce. We see this a lot with nursing apprenticeships, which is a perfect way to learn how to be a nurse, to do it on the job. But I've only ever seen one actually available out for the public. Generally, students will be advised to go into, if they don't want to go to university, to go into working in healthcare as an assistant. And once they've been there a few years, approach the employer for some internally sponsored apprenticeships to get up to the nursing degree. So whenever students want a degree apprenticeship, I say, good, go for you, go for it. But have a UCAS application as a backup, because you don't have to go to university if you've applied, but you don't want to leave it until too late and hang all your hopes on that degree apprenticeship.
Thanks, Joanna. And a question here about the cost of university. Do different courses cost different amounts?
No, with the caveats. As long as your student is eligible for home fees, which means they are a British resident, then all courses cost, the tuition fees are £9,535 every year. However, some courses might have additional costs. So, for example, there might be equipment they need to buy and so on. Quite often the university will be able to help with that too, if there's so hardship funds and so on. But the cost of the teaching, the maximum any university is allowed to charge is £9,535. And I would say 95% of them do charge that maximum.
And then other costs would obviously depend on things like accommodation. So most universities provide first year students with accommodation. So they might be in halls or in university residence. Lots of universities then require students to live off campus in their second and usually in third year. And actually, one thing I would say, just worth mentioning perhaps here, is that students at university have to find their second year accommodation really quite early on. So I remember with both of mine at uni, they were looking for their second year accommodation by November of their first year. And we thought that was incredibly early because they'd only just really started to make friends. And suddenly they were having to make decisions about, who they were going to live with in their second year. But that's the reality. And those, really decent accommodation can go quite quickly. So the cost of things like accommodation can vary hugely. And I guess the quality of your accommodation is really what's being reflected there. Things like how close are you to the university? Things like are bills included? That's worth talking to the landlord about. Is it university endorsed accommodation, or is it really through a private landlord, a private letting? So things like that are really worth exploring. And then other costs really are down to, well, what sort of things are they doing in their enrichment time, free time? And university isn't just about the qualification at the end of it, it's about the whole experience. And I'd encourage anyone going to university to really take advantage of the clubs and societies. They can do skydiving, scuba diving, all sorts of things at really reduced costs that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. So things like part-time jobs. Lots of students these days do have part-time jobs. I think when I was at university, very few did, but that really has changed now, and that can help obviously with those accommodation costs. A difference between a city university and a campus university is an interesting question. So a typical campus university, so take a university like Keele University in Staffordshire near Newcastle under Lyme. So everything is on campus, and the university is like a little town in its own right. So at Keele, for example, it has its own shops, it's got its own bank, it has its own hairdressers. They're all on site. It's got its bars and restaurants and cafes and its own church. In fact, a number of churches, I think. And what else would you get at a campus university? Everything is on site, isn't it? Oh yes, the library. That's quite important. Yes, the accommodation, and I'm just thinking of Keele as an example. Some of those are individual rooms, but lots of those are now en suite rooms. Certainly, when I was at university, the concept of en suite didn't exist. But most rooms that we looked at when we were going around universities with our children are now en suite. The standard of university accommodation now is quite incredible, isn't it? So all of those things would be on site. A campus university is like a town in its own right. Warwick University as a campus uni is absolutely huge. I say it's like a little town. It's more like a city at Warwick. A city university, so a university like Leicester, a university like Bournemouth really is a city or town university. There you've got a central area where the university buildings are, but really you're living off campus, so you might be a bus ride away from the university itself, and you're then making use of the facilities that there are within the city itself. So some people really want that. They really want the vibrance of being in a city, somewhere like Manchester with its amazing clubs and its amazing facilities, and young people perhaps might want to really take advantage of those. Others, I think, really want to have the security of being on a campus, have the security and the comfort of having everything around them. Of course, there's a difference between a university like Keele is very much not exactly in the middle of nowhere. It's near Hanley and Newcastle under Lyme, but it's got its own lakes and woods, and that might really appeal to some students. Others want that, the real sort of vibrance of being somewhere like Manchester or in London. And I think that you're going to live there for 3 years at least, so it needs to be right for you, which is why, as I keep saying, go and visit them. That's the end of certainly the first lot of questions. We've got some others that have come in. If a young person doesn't think that uni is for them, what advice is there for them and parents about options after college? And university isn't right for everyone, absolutely. About 3/4 of A-level students tend to go on to university, but that's a quarter of students who don't. So what through the careers service, Joanna, what sort of things do we have? Sorry, I didn't make it obvious. I was asking a question.
I was nodding along. Yes, they can come to talk to us as well. We can help them look for apprenticeships if they're interested. If they purely just want to go out to work, we can help them with getting a good CV and how to negotiate job sites. Even if they find a job they really want to go for, then we're not going to apply for them, but if they want to bring us their application form or say, what do you think of this? We'll help them go through it, certainly.
Thanks, Joanna. And does the UCAS application act as the same application for the student loan? It doesn't. They're completely separate. So the student loan is through Student Finance UK, and they put their application in around about sort of March, April time, Joanna.
It varies every year, and they don't normally tell us until just before, but roughly February, March, February, March, finance applications open for courses starting in the following September.
And in terms of tuition fee loans and then maintenance, how do they work, Joanna?
You apply for them online through, basically, if you Google student finance, it'll come up. And come February, we'll be doing presentations about those to students as well. If you've got all the information you need, so could you turn your microphone off? I can hear myself, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you have all the information you need, it's about a 20-minute, half an hour form for the student to fill in. They then give the details of which parent is supporting the application, and then the parent will get an email link when they need to put in their national insurance number, and then the student loan company can work out how to means test the maintenance loan. As I said, everybody is entitled to the tuition fee loan. It's the maintenance loan that varies depending by household income and so on. If you've got all the information they want, which is proof of residency in the UK, so a passport or something like that, national insurance number, a bank account in their own name, it's a quick process. Where things start getting difficult is when they have limited right to remain in the country, or their living situation is a bit more creative than the standard, but we're here to help as much as we can. We're not experts in student loans, but we can help as far as it goes. And then there is a student finance helpline as well.
A question about how accommodation is sourced and sorted, and that depends a little bit on the university, doesn't it? But universities will contact the student who's selected a university as their choice university, the one that they want to go to, and then they will make it clear what options are available, and then you'd be applying through the university itself. So that would certainly be for the first year. Most universities, as I said earlier on, will be able to provide accommodation in at least the first year, either through university halls, university accommodation, which is really what most universities would have on offer in the first year. And then students might live off campus in the second year. And then that's really down to students to find their own accommodation in the second year. Obviously, universities will help. They'll have huge accommodation teams, and they'll give students the support that they need. My daughter was in halls in the first year, which was, I say halls, it was almost like a flat, really, I suppose. There were 6 people on a corridor. They had their own rooms. They were all en suite rooms. And then they had a shared kitchen. So that was quite nice in the sense that you're getting to meet other people. I remember the way it worked, actually, that you could even see a little bio of the other people online in the different flats that were available. And you could see so you wrote a little bit about yourself and your interests. You'd not met these people, but at least you could find out a little bit about them. So universities are really good at making that sort of thing available to students. They understand how difficult it is. But yeah, second and third year accommodation would be slightly different. Actually, my daughter's coming back into halls in the third year. So she's going into a studio flat at Bournemouth Uni for her third year, just because she doesn't want to be worrying about paying bills and things like that, which she's had to worry about in her second year. She wants to just concentrate on the final year of her courses. So sometimes things like that are available as well. And if it doesn't work out in terms of accommodation, the accommodation team will be there to support with that. Is it the duty of the parent to look for university for our child or the school? That's an interesting question. I mean, really, I would say it's the duty of the young person themselves, supported by both parents and the school, or in this case, the college. It's the young person who's going to be studying there and away from home, and they need to make sure, obviously, that they're comfortable with the support of the family. And some families are supportive of young people going a long way away. Other people want them to be at a more of a local university. I always think whatever university you go to, visit it, and visit on a rainy day if you possibly can, because then you'll know whether you really like it or not. And I always think you want to be just far enough away so that mum and dad can't pop in unannounced, but just close enough so that you can get home at the weekend and bring your washing with you. That's certainly the way that I thought about university. Can we help? Our work experience we've already covered. Yes, I think we're actually going round on a number of the questions. Do we provide a reference to the university about the students' aptitude, attitude, punctuality, absences? We do provide a reference to universities, yeah, but it's not really about. Yes, it covers things like aptitude and attitude, not really punctuality and absences and things like that. The reference will be partly about Milton Keynes College, to put things into context, partly about the students' courses that they've taken and how they've got on with those courses, and then partly about their general approach to study, to learning, and we will make a recommendation. I would say a recommendation or not, we would always be giving a positive reference. We don't write negative references. We always talk about students positively. So I think that's important just to emphasize. And do T levels follow similar timelines for finding out about predicted grades? That's a good question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Might need to come back to you on that because T levels obviously have a different assessment structure to A levels. There's more of a direct relationship between what they're doing throughout the course and therefore a clearer path towards a final grade than with A levels. A levels, everything is assessed at the end of year 2 through those final exams. So I'll get some clarification on that and come back to you. It was Abby who asked that question. So Abby, if you want to pop that as a question into the A-level team, the A-level team at Milton Keynes, MK College rather, .ac.uk, then we can get back to you and give you clarification on that one. Yeah, I think we're kind of coming round to the end now. So, and we're just coming to the end of the time that we've allocated. Actually, there is one more question here. If the young person doesn't think that uni is for them, no, sorry, we did cover that one. Yeah, so I think we've gone full circle. I can't see any more questions coming in, Joanna.
I've typed a couple of replies to some of them, but I think that's everything. Yes, so loan repayments are paid before tax. Predicted grades you've answered, have you?
Mm-hmm.
And then if your student has a learning need, then they can come to the careers team and we'll help them as well. So I put a comment there saying how to contact us.
So, okay, well, thank you very much for everyone then for attending this evening. Hope that's been useful. Hope it's answered some of your questions. If you've got other questions, don't hesitate to contact us at either of the email addresses that Joanna gave out earlier on. We'll be sending the presentation round from Caroline Squires, who will have sent the invitation to this evening. So we'll get everything sent round by the end of this week. So thank you very much. Good luck to your young people. Reassure them, and we'll hold their hand and yours through every step of the process. So thanks very much for coming, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Take care. Goodbye.